Hello and welcome back to Dungeons & Dragons Basics, from Dice to Roleplay. As we learn more about Dungeons & Dragons and how to play, I hope you're enjoying this series, and which will eventually, potentially, lead to an actual campaign on YouTube. So the more support and love the series gets, the more energy I can invest into making sure an actual play session happens. Let's get started with today's episode, which is all about character building. As a player, you're going to have to build a character that you're going to use throughout your adventures. So understanding how that process works is a pretty important part of Dungeons & Dragons. Let's get started. First of all, you're going to need a character sheet. Like I said last episode, your character sheet is going to have all of the different things that you need on it while you're playing. There are two different types of character sheets. There are physical sheets that you can work with your DM to correctly fill out, and then you can have it all by hand. They're handwritten and easily changeable, and it's easier to have homebrew or make custom content with them. There are online resources like D&D Beyond and Roll20 that have step-by-step walkthroughs to make your character sheets, and they can generate PDFs that can be printed, or you can just play on your laptop. However, they're usually restricted to your standard D&D mechanics unless you're willing to invest some money in the program. In Dungeons & Dragons, there are many different fantasy races that you can play as, and more have been added from time to time. Standard races in D&D are like the humans, and the elves, and dwarves, but there are other ones that exist in the world with special abilities and feats associated with them. For example, elves have the ability to see in the dark, so they can see at night and in caves and stuff without light. Although there are many different official playable races, some monster enemy races can only be used via homebrew. So you're going to have to pick a race for your character. Each character also has a class. A class is the kind of fighter archetype your character is going to be modeled after. Each class has distinct advantages and abilities, as well as some drawbacks, right? Not everything is, you can't be good at everything. Only some classes have access to magic and spells, and others have the ability to attack multiple times a turn. So it's important to have a variety of classes in a party to ensure that each player's weaknesses can be covered. Right? Generally, you want one that can take a lot of hit damage, you want one that can deal out a lot of damage, you want someone who can support the party with spells and magic, and probably someone who can heal. Right? Healing is important. Abilities are based off the race you choose, the class your character is, and your stats. Stats can be determined by rolling a d20 for each stat, or by using what's called the standard array of 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Individual abilities are all tied to one of these 6 stat types. For instance, the athletics ability is tied to strength, or acrobatics is tied to dexterity. Each character has some sort of background. Before your adventure began, you didn't just poof into existence moments before. Something happened to your character prior to this happening. And there are several pre-built backgrounds that provide certain skill proficiencies. For example, an acolyte provides skill proficiencies in insight and religion because they have been part of some sort of church. A sage, on the other hand, gets proficiencies in arcana and history, as well as the ability to easily find information. When building a character, it's important to take into account how your background will age your character. What did your character do prior to the game? Were they a lone soldier fighting hordes of evil? Were they just a regular person who got thrust into this situation? All of these things are important to consider. This part of your character sheet also lets you describe the physical features of your character, like your hair, your skin color, or how old you are. Personal characteristics, as well as your backstory, personality, and past enemies, can also be added here. This is also a big part to talk about with your dungeon master, because it's going to help fit into their story. So this is the kind of stuff you're going to be talking with your DM about. Another part of your background description is what's called an alignment. It's kind of a big deal for a lot of people in Dungeons & Dragons, but doesn't have to be. Alignment can help you make decisions as a character during the game. For instance, a lawful good character doesn't break the law, while a chaotic good character does things for the good of society, but will do what it takes to accomplish it, regardless of the legality. So that helps you kind of narrow down its personality and its choices based on, this alignment that you choose for your character. Your character is also going to be carrying equipment. And based on your backstory, your character might receive certain items. For example, a sage might start with ink, a quill, a knife, and a letter from a colleague, maybe some gold. Other items can be added as well through a system your DM decides. This is a chance to add weapons, armor, and other useful equipment like thieves' tools or a mason's kit. Some DMs use encumbrance to limit how much you can carry based on your size. Others do not. It's up to your DM to decide how that will work out. Sometimes DMs will let you use, they'll give you a certain amount of gold and you have to buy your items. So they might say, okay, here's 50 gold. You can spend it on your stuff. Or they might say you can choose one weapon, one thing of armor from a list. It depends on what the DM wants to do. And then, of course, there's always extra stuff on character sheets. You might get new items, you'll level up, your clothes will change, and that's going to affect your character and their stats. Some players, even over the course, might decide to do 2 classes at once, which is called multiclassing, which means they choose more than one class. Multiclassing usually has to occur later in the game, but can technically happen as early as level 2. As you level up your character, they're going to learn new skills and gain new abilities. Therefore, you're going to have to write all sorts of stuff on this character sheet. Thanks again for watching Dungeons & Dragons Basics from Dice to Roleplay. Next episode, we'll continue to learn more about Dungeons & Dragons and see what we can do as a group to have fun. See you next time.